Welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast, produced by Focus Shift Films and sponsored by Welsh sports fans. I'm your host, Daniel J. Harris. I'm a filmmaker and entrepreneur working across sport, and I'm a huge fan of sports content. This podcast is my chance to meet amazing people who are doing amazing things in the sports content space and to share their stories with you in the hope that it inspires ideas. On this episode, we have the amazing Gareth Keir, the former CEO of Wales Rugby League. Hi, Gareth. Welcome to the Beautiful Game Plan podcast. You're a huge sports fan, aren't you? Kind of tell me where your love of sport started and kind of what part it's played in your life.
I don't know if I'm amazing, but thank you for that. Sport is a huge part of my life and my family's life. I grew up, I've got a brother and sister. My younger brother, Hugh, is 18 months younger than me. We played any type of sport when we were growing up, cricket, football, rugby union, and my dad, who was a big influence on our lives, took us everywhere. So he took us to the rugby, he took us to the football, he took us to the cricket. So we started lives with a great love for it and being very competitive. And that's just carried on. And I think when you have been involved in sport, or you are involved in sport, it opens up the world for you, and you make lifelong friends. So it's been a great journey.
And your family is still involved in sport as well. Your lad plays rugby league?
Yeah. So Elliot, very proud of him. He's 35 now, but he's captain of Wales and has been for the last 5 years. He's had a great career in Super League. He's dropped down a level now to the Championship. He's playing with Batley. Because he's gone part-time. He's a firefighter as well. And all my family do. My brother plays for Wales cricket over 60s. His kids are cricket players. My youngest son, Scott, he's a rugby player as well. So, it's a huge part of our lives.
Fantastic. And then for yourself as well, you had a successful career in business, and then you had the opportunity to become the CEO of Wales Rugby League. How did that come about?
Probably where we were as a family, we always loved sports. So I was always very supportive of my sons and what they were doing. And of course, when Elliot went into professional rugby league and international sport, I did whatever I could to help him. And I kind of started getting involved when Elliot got involved, when he started playing professionally, and helped him a little bit, Wales Rugby League in the World Cup in 2013, and helped broker some deals for him, some sponsorship deals when the World Cup came to Cardiff. So I was always kind of around it because of my background as a same business, and in particular in marketing, and being living and being born and bred in Cardiff and in Wales. And then they lost my predecessor a fairly short notice, so they were in a bit of a hole. So at the time I was doing some consultancy, and I was in a position to say, well, I can help out. And I did, and then I applied for the job and got it, and I was there for just over 3 years.
So you kind of stepped into the big job there. Do you know what I mean? Taking over rugby league in Wales. What were your objectives going in there? What were your aims? What did you want to try and do? What did you want to try and transform? Where did you want to take the sport?
I think I was pretty close to it anyway because of Elliot's involvement. So I kind of knew what was going on, and I think and I treated it a little bit as I would with a consultancy job. You go in, and first of all, you try and meet as many people as you can and listen to what they're saying. And you're a bit of a sponge, really, because you need to really understand what's going on and what people feel, and try and gauge the room and what people's feelings are about what's right, what's wrong. And lots of people have lots of different opinions. There's always going to be critical things that you've got to deal with straight away as a CEO. And then there's obviously short-term and longer-term objectives that you can meet. I think one of the big things for me, was we looked at governance, leadership and governance, the framework that Sport Wales give for all national governing bodies in Wales. That was a really important thing to me, to make sure that we had that right. And then obviously you've got to look at, you look at the game. And I went to a rugby league game, and the first thing that sounded to be a community game. And there was a referee there, but there were no linesmen. There were no assistant referees. And I said, well, where are the linesmen? They said, well, we don't have them. I said, well, why? And they said, we just haven't got enough qualified people to do it. And I thought, well, hang on a second. that doesn't feel right. It doesn't look good from a fan perspective, and I don't think it feels right from a player perspective either. So looked into resurrecting the match officials department, and I actually got James Jones involved, who was already a well-known rugby union referee. And I had done a little bit with rugby league, so I made him head of match officials and set about, rejuvenating that department, because I felt that if we had more referees, we had more games. And if we had better referees, we had better games. And sometimes there are challenges within sport in terms of discipline around referees and that sort of thing. So we did that, and we merged. One of the things we did was everyone had to pay to go on a match officials course, which I thought was crazy. So we made it free. Just got loads of people on it, men and women, and merged it with our coaching courses so they could do both, and made it free. And we literally went from, I think when I joined, we had probably 5 match officials in the whole of Wales. And then within a couple of months, we went to sort of like 25, 30, and it just grew and grew and grew. And gave it an identity and made sure that match officials were well trained, well supported. I don't think they were very well supported. Things like I would go to games and make sure I would go and speak to the match official and speak to them afterwards, and make sure that they would go into the clubhouse afterwards, and that clubs had a responsibility to make them feel welcome. So I think that was one of the biggest things that I did. And I'm glad to see that James Jones is still there and carrying on with that work.
Just 5 referees in all of Wales is absolutely bonkers. Like, no referee, no match. You need someone to officiate it, and just having 5, wow. Like that's not great, is it?
No. And there were lots of challenges with that, and referees would come across from England, but I felt that when you look at pathways, you have pathways for players, you have pathways for coaches, and I'm a strong believer that you should have a pathway for referees, and sometimes that's overlooked in sports. And actually, James went on to be the first dual code international rugby union and rugby league referee, which is a great thing. And and then you have youngsters coming through, and so it's not just about men and women, it's about younger people getting involved as match officials, which is happening in Wales now. And so they're in a much better position as far as that is concerned. And and the other thing is, I mentioned pathways, there were no women rugby league players in Wales. There was no provision for women, which I thought was disappointing, and that's something had to be done about that. I was fortunate enough to coach the women's national side in rugby union back in 2000, so I'd always been pretty close to women's sport, and I still am. So that was another thing that we got going, and I'm really pleased to say that we have a world-ranked international women's team now, and also Cardiff Demons, which are a club team competing in the national competition with the RFL in England. So that's also a great legacy.
Well, that's it. It's all about the ecosystem, isn't it? You can't just focus on male players and their pathway. You need to have women's teams. You need to have referees. They all need to have their own pathways, because they build up the ecosystem of what is that sport. And you've got women then involved in it. They take their kids along. That opens the doorway for more kids to get involved. More referees means you're going to have more matches. You've got to look beyond, do you know what I mean, kind of a small, narrow window of elite men in sport, and look at what the bigger picture is in order to make it more open and welcoming to more people. And it sounds like that's the sort of thing you were doing.
Yeah, and look, a lot of the money that you get from Welsh Government and Sport Wales is about participation. So as a national governing body, that's your role, is to increase participation and to make it as inclusive and as available to as many people as you can. And as you've just said, that's how you do that. You make sure that you have men, women, junior age groups for boys and girls. You have disability sports, like wheelchair is a massive sport for Wales Rugby League, and the wheelchair team is ranked 3rd in the world, and so it's a whole breadth of things that you do. And the other thing is, if you look at it with a commercial view, it's a competitive world in terms of getting sponsorship. Well, if you go to a sponsor, and in fact, I used to do this. I think previous to me, they used to go to sponsors and say, right, our men's team are doing this, our men's team are doing that. Well, I never used to start with that. I would start with our wheelchair, and I would start with our pathways, and then I would mention our girls, and I would mention our men at the very end, because I think that when you look into try and get a sponsor on board, they've got to buy into your culture, and they've got to buy into your DNA. And so therefore, if you're able to, and that's attractive to any particular sponsor. They don't want to be down one track. They want to be associated with a governing body that enables everybody to be part of what the sport is.
Yeah, and I think a lot of those big companies that are looking for sponsorship, they've got a certain social responsibility kind of charter internally that they have to be kind of mindful of when they're spending their money, but also from their point of view. If you're just kind of focusing on the elite men and kind of their audience, opening up the women, opening up to disability kind of versions of the sport, it just widens up the audience that they're reaching as well. And it's a simple numbers game, isn't it? Do you mean if you've just got 25 men playing elite sport, that's not much. If you've then got 100 men, 100 women, 100 wheelchair athletes, that's a much bigger sport. Then there's more matches. Do you mean there's more money coming in through tickets or merchandise? The commercial revenue can be bigger then because your visibility is bigger. You've got a bigger imprint on kind of audiences across Wales. So they all go hand in hand into commercial success, don't they? And I think this brings me nicely on to my next question, where rugby league is not as big as rugby union in Wales. Do you mean so you haven't got the revenues, you haven't got the employees, you haven't got the resource available to you? How challenging is that as the CEO of a national governing body when you don't really have a massive amount of money to spend? You don't have like hundreds of hours of resource to use. How do you make sure you're doing the right things? You're not stretching yourself too far and you're still delivering?
Well, it's a huge challenge. And I think that, where you say that rugby league is obviously not as big as the other sports that you mentioned, but it actually goes deeper than that. One of the things why I'm proud to have been involved in rugby league and still very supportive of it is that rugby league has a very strong social conscience. And I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about the statue project I was involved in a bit later on, but there's still today a lot of discrimination against rugby league as a sport from other sports. And that still happens in Wales. I grew up as a young man in Llanrumney in Cardiff, and my brother, and as far as my father was concerned, rugby league was the devil's work. You still get involved in rugby league. They pay their players, and we don't do that rugby. We don't watch it. We don't get involved in it. And that's how I kind of grew up on it. And then I kind of like understood a little bit more about it. And that isn't the case. So I think that, it was a difficult gig, very difficult gig, but that's when I kind of go back to the culture element of it and the social conscience. So when you start to share that history that people actually don't know about, then that probably makes you a little bit more attractive to some sponsors, I think, because then they think, well, that doesn't seem right, and we should get involved in that. Still a really, really tough gig because, look, all the national governing bodies in Wales are in exactly the same boat, doing exactly the same thing. They have slightly different offerings and they come in from different ways, but it was really challenging. I was able to get over the line a big 5-figure sponsorship deal for the women's pathway with a company called Floodlighting and Electrical. Well, that was really major. And we actually got VX3 as a kit supplier come in, and they were very, very supportive of us at the time to all of our pathways, including the women and the wheelchair. So I think, you just got to pitch it right and try and find the right people. And you just, and actually, it's not rocket science. You just got to bang on as many doors as you can and don't take no for an answer, which I don't usually do.
Riverside Sports Bar with Welsh sports fans is Newport's premier sports bar and has been voted best sports bar at the Welsh Hospitality Awards. With a range of huge TVs, an incredible food menu with burgers, dirty fries and much more, including vegan options, it is the place to watch sport. Visit www.riversidesportsbarnewport.com to find out more.
And then after your time at Rugby League, you then moved across to Hockey Wales, where you were tasked with sourcing funding and sponsorship for the Men's World Cup in India. How did you find the move from Rugby League to hockey? How did they differ? Were there any similarities? And what was the challenge like there?
Well, so Tom Overton, who'd been involved in Sport Wales, he'd said to me, "Look, there's this opportunity going in Hockey Wales," and I knew of Rhea Burridge-Mail, who was the CEO, was an ex-hockey international, and I'd watched what she does, and I was really impressed with her as a CEO. So I went and spoke to her, and they said, "Look, we've got this challenge," and my background was more commercial because of my business background. They needed that help, so it was kind of a really good fit. Still a real tough challenge because of the things that we've already discussed. I don't think it would be unfair to say that hockey is probably a middle class game. Most of the people that play hockey have been to university and probably picked it up in university. And if your mum and dad play hockey, then the children would play hockey. So it's a very different demographic to rugby league. But then if you go to university, then there's people involved, come out of university and they're involved in business. So you're trying to tap into that. And also they're involved in local government. So I was able to help get a deal over the line with Study in Wales, which is a body which is funded by Welsh Government to bring students to Wales from all over the world. And that was kind of a really good fit, really, because the World Cup was in India. And the biggest sport in India is hockey, so that was really good. And and I have to say that Rhea had done a lot of work on that previously, but it was just kind of helping shape that and make sure that we got that over the line. So that was really helpful. And when we look at funding, it's not just about the private sector; it's about the public sector as well, because you've got then to reach out to Welsh Government, Sport Wales, all the local unitary authorities, and I'm a big believer in sports diplomacy, which where countries like Wales can share what we do as a small country around the world through the medium of sport. So I think that's really important as well. And so Welsh Government were very, very supportive of that as well. And so the men went to the World Cup, and they had for the men a successful campaign based on where they've been before. And it was a great experience, but it was challenging. I was supposed to go, but because of the budgetary constraints, when you're trying to make sure that all the performance staff go, I didn't end up going, and that's just how it is, because you're trying to spread your money as far as you can.
Yeah, and I think it's a really interesting point there about Study in Wales. I did a bit of work for them when I was at Eat Sleep Media around the World Cup, creating content in Wales with foreign students around the World Cup, which then they use to promote Wales to potential kind of students around the world. And I know India is a kind of big market for them, as is kind of China and places like that. So there's an opportunity there to think outside the box, isn't there? Rather than just saying, right, we need an Adidas, or we need we need a food brand, or we need something like that. Is looking at who's your potential audience here and what brands are looking to reach that potential audience, and how you can create a partnership that's got a certain synergy. So it's not just, we need X amount of money, you give it to us, we put a logo on a t-shirt, but it's looking at, right, you need to get to them, we're getting to them, why don't you work with us to get to them? And we work together and collaborate, and we get the access to that audience. Your money's kind of spent on us, which helps us do what we do, which helps us promote Wales. And then it kind of it's mutually beneficial then, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? And finding those right partners that know where you're going and what you're doing, and see the benefits in that for them, rather than just sign us a check and send it over.
Have you been reading my notes? Because that's exactly what I had written down. I think, no, you've hit the nail right on the head there. I think, it's about finding a partner, and then actually starting a journey together, because then you're both trying to contribute mutually and get something out of it. And I think that is a real key point. You might be fortunate enough to get a financial benefactor who's just close to the sport, and that obviously happens, and they're just happy to put the money in because it's philanthropy, and they'll do that. But something which is a better relationship, and actually probably longer term, is a partnership where you can both sit down and say, right, what are our goals? And there's some mutual goals here, how you can both help each other. And Study in Wales actually was a perfect example of that, and that as a partnership with Hockey Wales would serve as an exemplar to other potential commercial deals of what you kind of need and actually what both parties can get out of it. So, yeah, that was a really good one. And I look, it's as you say, it suited both bodies really, really well, and it worked really, really well. So, it's just a question of fine. And I spoke to a lot of universities. In fact, I spoke to all universities in Wales and some outside of Wales. And they all wanted to be involved, but they all had budgetary constraints, and so it was difficult. And we had some involved, and that was great. But it was a challenge. But that was a perfect one. Studying Wales was a good one.
Yeah, and like you said, finding a philanthropist that just wants to put some money and not get anything back is fantastic. But you can't manufacture that, can't you? Either there's someone there that wants to put money in and loves the sport, or there isn't. You can't go and create that or go and build a partnership quickly to make that happen.
Well, no, but I think that what I am noticing a lot with a lot of bodies now is that they're creating philanthropy departments. So what they're doing is they're reaching out, as a for instance, Cardiff Met University would reach out to ex-students and get them back involved, because a lot of them will go on to successful careers and might be in a position to contribute. A lot of the private schools in England and Wales, that's a massive part of what they do. So they do get a lot of funding from that. And actually, if you think about it, every sport, every club should do it. You should make sure that your ex-players and your ex-coaches stay part of the club and make sure that they stay re-engaged the club. I'm not sure that a lot of sports or a lot of clubs have as much focus on that, but I think they should, because people go on to do different jobs, and they'll have a soft spot for a club or a soft spot for a national governing body, and then they may be able to support you. So it's building that family and making sure that they feel that they can still be part of it.
Yeah, I suppose that's part of the long-term plan, isn't it? Those that have come through your sport, that have built a career from your sport, then when they kind of leave the sport and move on, they're able to put something back in and provide opportunities for the next generation. And that could be financial, or it could be through mentoring or coaching. It then uses their profile and their story to inspire the next generation and bring them through, doesn't it? So, and I think go on, sorry, you were going to say something.
No, I'm just going to say you're right. I think they know, if they've come through your sport, they know how much fun that is and what they got out of it. So, they'll be sold on it. And if they came through your educational establishment to get their degree to allow them to do whatever they've done in life, then they know already the benefits of doing that. So I noticed there's a lot of organizations now looking at philanthropy, where perhaps before, as you say, it was just hoping that it was somebody out there that might do it. I think that's an active part of people's strategy now.
Fantastic. And I think that brings us nicely on to some of the work you've done recently, where you've helped to raise money to build a statue to honour rugby league legends Gus Risman, Billy Boston and Clive Sullivan. So kind of why was that an important cause for you?
Well, I'm born and bred in Cardiff, and I think that, as I say to you, when I went into rugby league, there was a lot of misconceptions that I personally had. So I educate myself a little bit about it, and then you think, well, hang a second, they did pay people in rugby league, but that was broken time payments, because most of the people playing rugby league were miners or steel workers, and they worked 6 days a week. So to train or play, they had to lose money in the mine. So they were just asking for 6 months to be able to play. So when you start to understand those things, and then you look at it a little bit deeper, and obviously there was a documentary, The Code Breakers, which shone more light on than that whole story. And as I say, I spent a lot of time when I was growing in my youth, running around town and down the docks and down the bay, playing different sports with lots of different boys from that particular area. And then you start to understand a little bit more about it. And then when someone says to you that, it was an open secret that Billy Boston would never play for Wales because of the color of his skin, because he was black, that shudders me. So there was two things there. He was black, so he had to go north. And actually, rugby league is a sport, social conscience, welcomed him with open arms, as they did with Clive, as they did with Gus, and as they did with many others who went north. They welcome, and they have a long history of doing that. And of course, Clive Sullivan was the first black captain of any international side in the world. And that was in the 70s. And so, we're still talking about the world was a really interesting place here in terms of race and discrimination. So I felt it was a really important thing to do. And of course, got involved with that, got involved with people like Ken Poole and Saeed Ibrahim, who's the local Bhutan councillor. And then we were able to get people like, big hitters like Sir Stanley Thomas involved. And of course, then when you've got that, you have a lot of credibility, and Hugh Thomas, the leader of Cardiff City Council, got involved. And then things started to really move. So it was a great experience. And the most important thing was that Billy was there to see it unveiled. And Gus's family was there, and Clive's wife was there, and Anthony, his son, was there. So it was a brilliant day. And actually, the most important thing for me, as I was thinking about this before I came on, is that as impressive as that statue is, the work that everybody put in to make it happen, for me, it's the start, not the end. It really has to be a signpost for the future, because discrimination happens every day in every walk of life, and we've got to make sure that doesn't happen. And the way that you do that is you educate people, and that's a great place to go and talk about Billy and Clive's story. I mean, not forgetting that Gus was a Latvian refugee as well when he came to Cardiff, and to talk about that story in education. So it's a really important thing for the future.
Yeah, and I think that statue is long overdue, and the sharing of their stories has been long overdue as well. I know there's been more done recently. Codebreakers, BBC have done some stuff, but yeah, those stories are important for sport, for identity, for Wales, and kind of who we are as kind of a nation. And I'm glad to see that they now got pride of place there in Cardiff Bay, and can be celebrated for generations to come. So Gareth, thank you very much for chatting with me today. It's been absolutely brilliant. So just before we go, you're working as a consultant now, so all this knowledge is available to people out there. How can they find out a little bit more about you and get in touch with you if they'd like to get your services on board?
Yeah, I'm on Twitter at Kia Gareth. So give me a follow on that. I'm obviously on LinkedIn and Instagram. I don't do TikTok. Don't really understand it, to be honest with you. But yeah, I'm out there. And it's a funny thing, isn't it? Everywhere I go and you get involved in things, is that I don't know why, but I just have a natural inclination to trying to help people get involved. Amusingly, they don't always want me to get involved, but you just can't help doing it sometimes. So yeah, I'm out there, and if anybody wants any help or guidance or a sounding board, happy to do it.
Fantastic. So thank you very much for everyone at home for listening or watching, and hopefully you've enjoyed it and you've learned a little from it. Make sure you subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes. Don't forget to like and share this episode, and subscribe to the channel for more content.